Hi there. So what I want to do in this fourth lesson in the first module is following on from module 3, where I looked at the C major scale, which was, and the chord that goes with that scale. What I want to do in this lesson is build on this, taking each note in turn and then building the scale accordingly, and then coming up with all the chords that are in the key of C. So just to get you a better understanding of what a key is, if I start on the note C here and I play every single note up to the C here, like this, we have C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and C. That's all of the notes that we have in music. There aren't any others. All of the other notes are either an octave above or an octave below those. When we play in a key, what we're doing is we're taking specific notes out of those 12 and only playing with those notes. So in this case, it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So you can see there's a pattern here as well. I'm playing, sometimes I've got a 2 fret gap, sometimes I've got a 1 fret gap. A 2 fret gap is called a tone, a 1 fret gap is called a semitone. And what we can do with this is actually build ourselves a pattern that we can use to build the whole of the rest of the key. So C to D is a tone, D to E is a tone, E to F is a semitone because it's only 1 fret, F to G is a tone, G to A is a tone, A to B is a tone, and then B to C is a semitone. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. All I'm going to do is play exactly the same scale, but instead of starting on C, I'm going to start on D. I'm going to play exactly the same notes, and then we'll just go through. And then if you remember taking the first, third, and fifth notes gave us our C major triad, and to turn it into a full chord, what we did is we found other notes that were within that triad that we can also play quite easily. So we can play another C, which is our root note, and we can play another E, which is our fifth note. That gave us the full chord. So what we're going to do is do the same thing, but instead of starting from C, I'm going to start from D, but I'm still going to play the same number of notes, so I'm going to add another one on. So instead of finishing on C, I'm going to finish on D. So that looks something like this. So go from C to D, so that's open D, 2nd fret D, 3rd fret D, open G, 2nd fret G, open B, 1st fret B, 3rd fret B. Exactly the same, but I'm starting from D. I'm then going to take the first note, which is D, the third note, which is E, F, and then the fifth note, which is G, A. So D, F, A. Now I can't build a chord around that because I can't play that note and that note at the same time because they're on the same string. So what I'm going to try and do is find a note that is the same as that, an octave higher. And that's an F. That's my F up here. Okay, so I'm going to have D. I know those two notes need to be in it. But I can play that note. Okay, what I can also then do is find this note here because it's an octave of my D. Okay. Now that gives us a D minor. Now we think we're in the key of C major, went from C to D minor. The reason for that was because we started on the second degree of that scale, which was a D, but we followed exactly the same sequence. So the reason it's minor compared to major, if you look at the amount of frets between our C note and our third note, which is E, that's 4 frets, that's 2 tones. If we look at the difference between our D to our F, tone and a half compared to, now these are called intervals. The distance between one note and the next note is called an interval. So 4 frets is a major third, 3 frets is a minor third. Okay, that makes it minor. It's that note within that chord that makes it minor. It's that note within the C chord which makes it major. The difference between a major chord and a minor chord is that third note. So we know in the D minor here that that note is the note that is making it minor. If we wanted to make it major, we know the major third is 1 semitone higher than the minor third. So I can actually play like that. That's our D major. But actually within this key, we want D minor. Okay, so we go C, D minor. Now, the next degree is an E, so I actually want to start on my low E here. But I'm going to play exactly the same notes, E, F, which is on the 1st fret of the E string, G, which is on the 3rd fret of the E string, open A, B, which is on the 2nd fret of the A string, C, which is on the 3rd fret, and that's the same scale, D, E. And do exactly the same thing. I'm going to take the 1st note, the 3rd note and the 5th note. 1st note is E, 3rd note is G, and the 5th note is B. Now, we can play this one, but we can't play that with it. That's a G. I know I've got an open G here, so I'll make sure that's in the chord. I've got an octave E, so that will fit in the chord as well. Okay, let's get in there. That B will also work. I've got an open B string, but because this note here, where my 2nd finger is a B, I know that's going to fit. And also the top string is an E, which is my root, so I know that's going to fit. So actually I can just play on the 2nd fret of the A string and on the 2nd fret of the D string. I'll just play those two, but then I play all 6 strings. That's E minor. So I've got C major, D minor, E minor. You hear how the chords fit together? Then do exactly the same thing. I'm going to go from F. F, G, A, that's my 3rd note, B, C, D, E, F. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That's my triad. Now I can't play that together because they're not on different strings, but I know what those notes are. So it's F, A. So I need to find an A. Well, here's one. Here's an F. Here's an A. Here's a C. Here's another F. Okay. So this is my F note. Here's my A note. Here's my C note. There's my F major triad, F, A and C. And I can put another F on top of this. This is a little bit tricky. This is always the difficult chord for beginners. But again, it's one of these things, it comes after a period of time. The hard bit about it is you need to fret the top 2 strings with your first finger. So it's 2 strings with 1 finger, like that. Then your second finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. And then your 3rd finger here on the 3rd fret of the D string. Okay, it is tricky. It's going to be a lot harder for a beginner. Actually, what you can do if you want to cheat a little bit, because it's still in key, is just don't play that top F. That E actually is still in key. So within the key of C, you can get away with playing that. That's actually a more complicated chord called an F major 7th, but don't worry about that at this stage. Try and practice it like that. But if you really struggle, that will still work. So far we've got C, D minor, E minor, F major. We're now going to G. Play exactly the same. So it's G, A, B is a 3rd note, C, D. So that's my triad. So you can see this part actually, I can play that there. So I'm going to play that here. Now we know that the open G, that's going to fit in the chord because that's the root note. Now in a lot of books, you'll see G played with the 3rd finger on the top string. That's another G. So there's 3 Gs that are in the slightly out of tune, I think. And then they play the open B, because B is the 3rd note, and you get a chord that's a bit like this. So this is how it's written in most books. I just don't like the sound of that chord. I've always played it by putting my 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string and my little finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. What that is in practice is I'm using my 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string to give me an extra 5th note. And the 5th note in any chord is the strong dominant note. So other than the root note, it's the strongest note in the chord. So the difference between that and this, to me that's just a much, much stronger sounding chord. I've always preferred that to, so I've never played it that way. If I don't like it, I don't play it. Okay, so there's my G. So far in the scale we've got C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major. Let's start with A. Exactly the same notes as C major, I'm just starting from A. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, dead easy. So the chord would build around that. That's 1, 2, 3, play the 1, 3 and 5. So here's the third note here, that's a C. Now what I can't do with this is play them together because they're on the same string, so I need to find another C. There's one up here, so play, I know those need to be in there. I also know there's an E, second fret of the D string. It's probably easier to fret the A note that's on the G string, that's on the second fret. And then I can play the top E as well because that's the fifth note. Okay? So there's an A minor. So C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. Now we come to B. There's a slight difference here in that you notice with all of the other chords, there might be a difference between the relationship between the root note and the third note, but the relationship between the root note and the fifth note is always constant. So your fifth notes have always been, let's see, that's the relationship, that's called an interval of a fifth. Okay. When we get to our B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you see that that fifth is flattened. C, it's like that, flattened fifth. It's called diminished fifth. So we're going 1, 2, 3. So I know it's a B, a D and an F are the notes that are going to be in the chord. Here's another B, and there's my D. So there's my third note, my fifth note, and that's an octave of the B. That E, it's not part of those three notes. There aren't any kind of convenient notes to be able to play that are within that B triad. So the triad being B, D, and F. So that's the chord. It's a bit of a complicated one, so what I would say is I'm going to show it to you, but don't worry too much about it at this point. Generally speaking, seventh chords don't come into our standard chord sequences. So you need to know about it, but you don't need to be able to do it just yet. But the actual chord itself, first finger on the second fret of the A string, second finger on the third fret of the D string on that F note. If we jump down to our third finger, still on the second fret on the B string, and then our fourth finger will come in and play the fourth fret on the G string. So what we get is that chord, which is a diminished chord. It's also quite hard when you're strumming to avoid hitting that top string. So what you can do, what I do actually, my first finger is just resting on that top string. So if I hit it, it doesn't matter. But then that brings us back to C. Do you hear how that resolves? So the chords that we've got are C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C. Play that again. again. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major again. So those 7 chords will always sound right together because they all share the same notes from the C major scale. So it's actually quite simple and quite straightforward, and the whole of rest of music works on exactly the same principle. We take that and apply that to any note, and then we take the first, third and the fifth from every degree of that scale. We will be able to harmonise that scale and put those chords into that scale. So from a theory point of view, it's actually not very difficult when you understand that. So don't worry about all the sharps and flats and why you've got diminished chords and all of those things. All you're doing is you're taking the first, third and fifth notes from every degree of the scale, but you're starting off with the major scale, which basically its pattern goes tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, which is 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret. And that, you know, we started from F, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret. It's really easy. If we were to build all of the chords off that, the chords that we would get would be major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and diminished. Okay, so wherever we start from, those chords will stay the same. We need to work out how to play them and how to actually get those notes into place, but fundamentally, that's how music works. So I'll leave you with that for now, okay? All I want you to do between now and the next lesson is just practice those 7 chords. C, I'll play it properly for you. Just practice those 7 chords. C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. You don't have to worry too much about B diminished. At least you know it's there. It's understanding it is more important than being able to play it at this stage. And C again. And just randomly go between them. So you go C to E minor, back to C again, back to say G, to C, to A minor, to D minor, to F, to C, to E minor, to G, to F, to C. For example, that was just completely random, just taking those chords totally at random. If you write them down on a piece of paper and just on sort of scraps of paper and just put them in a random order, you'll find that they will go together, they all fit. And this is the whole point of doing this way, is you're not learning songs at this stage, but you will start hearing songs within the chords you play. So in the next video, what we're going to do is actually start looking at how we number these particular chords. So they're still numbered, but we use Roman numerals. And then from this, how we can actually come up with popular, well-known chord sequences. So this is probably the biggest piece of theory within this first module. But once you understand that fundamentally everything is built off the same thing, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, and we're just taking each degree of that scale and applying a chord using the first note, third note, and fifth note, that gives us music. This should give you the ability to be able to understand music and start to teach yourself and work things out for yourself. So if you were to be able to take any other note at random and apply the same theory on a piece of paper, you would be able to work out what notes each of the triads made and then start to be able to find them on a guitar. So the next lesson we'll actually start looking at chord sequences in a little bit more detail. So until then, keep practicing and visit the website www.myguitarteacher.co.uk. Also visit the Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/myguitarteacher. And until next time, keep practicing. Thanks a lot.